Well, hello. It is Friday, and what a treat to be here with each and every one of you. I actually look forward to this day. We usually don't come live on Fridays, so they're very, very special. If you're joining me on the replay, happy replay day 82. We are live, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's live level up conversation.
Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Happy Friday indeed, my friends. I'm Winnie Sun, your host, Forbes contributor, CNBC council member, and award-winning financial pro, here to keep you on top of relevant, trending business news. But more importantly, you're always part of today's conversation, and that's why I love coming live with you. We're going to be sharing audience feedback during our community moment today. But before we get started, I'm going to tell you, today's kind of special. Today's just not like any other show because we have a very special guest with us today. Let me just say, I'm just going to tease it for you just for a second. He actually grew up in 5 countries and 4 continents. How many of you can say that you've done that? I certainly can. And he's someone that you definitely want to meet and hear from. And let me just tell you, he's so sweet. You're going to really enjoy this conversation. But before we do, let's do the business, kind of serious, important stuff first, right? Not important stuff. I shouldn't say that. The heavier stuff. That's what I'll say, the heavier stuff. And let's talk about where the market is. Let's tell you where the market is currently, because obviously it hasn't closed just yet. The financial markets, unfortunately, are going to be ending probably, I suspect, pretty difficult today on a Friday. The Dow is down 474 points currently. The NASDAQ is down currently 355 points. I know, I want to cry just seeing that number. And the NASDAQ is S&P is down 81 points as well. So the stock market continues the retreat today as 2 really big themes continue to pull at today's market. And it's kind of a continuation from yesterday. As you know, inflation is still sky high. So we saw numbers yesterday over 6% now. So when and by how much will the Fed increase interest rates this year in 2022? That's sort of the question that investors are very, very nervous about. We're really watching that very closely, and we suspect the Fed will be pretty aggressive in its rate hikes this year. The second thing that many of you know continues to pull at this market is, of course, the pandemic. So many unknowns, right? Is Omicron going to be it, or are we going to have another variant surprise? Hopefully this is it, but we don't know. And so investors, again, very skittish about that, as well as we see a lot of changes throughout the United States in terms of mask mandate changes and whatnot. The third sort of theme that's also still pulling at us, and of course, that is the geopolitical risk that we're seeing out of the Ukraine and the uncertainty there as well. So that's going to continue being some pressure in the financial markets. Now, before we get started, I just want to say a quick hello. I see so many of our friends today. I see CrossX Fighters, Joshua. I see you from YouTube Live. Thank you so much for being here. Vicky is joining us from the UK out on Facebook Live. Hello, my friends. Great to see you here as well. Gabe, it's wonderful to see you on LinkedIn Live. Wonderful. Wow, so many friends say thank you so much. Well, let me just say we are in for a treat. This is someone that I had a chance to, an opportunity, I should say, and the gift of collaborating with not too long ago, the one and only Tayo Rockson. I want to welcome to the show. Hello, Tayo. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How's everybody?
Well, I think everyone's great. We're really excited to have you here for sure. Let's just share a little bit of this. I got to go, Ty, because you're such an impressive human being and wonderful person. And that, of course, let's talk about, though, the bio, because the bio is actually pretty long, Tayo. Can we just talk about that? This might be one of the longest bios. And I know you're so modest. You said, just say my name. But you know what? Tayo Rockson, writer, speaker, consultant, podcaster, by the way, not just a podcaster, award-winning podcaster, professor, co-founder, brand strategist at UYD Management, which is a strategic consulting firm that empowers organizations to incorporate sustainable diversity and inclusion practices. And as we talked about earlier, he's lived at a few places. He's done a few TED Talks. By the way, easily one of my favorite TED Talks, and host of As Told by Nomads, which we talked about, that award-winning podcast. Tayo, is there anything you can't do?
Well, I can't dance. I've been working on my hip movement. Apparently, I have tight hips. But honestly, my background is just a reflection of my desire to learn. I don't know if anyone in the audience can relate to this, but growing up the way I did, I was often told what I could do and what I couldn't do. And I've always been someone who's been curious by nature. And it wasn't until I figured out that I was actually limitless as opposed to limited that I actually started to tap into my gifts. Because academically, I did what I was supposed to do. I did everything I was supposed to do socially, but it never quite felt like my true self. And I had that trauma of really learning how to work with my anxieties and the things that I was struggling with. And that's really what unlocked any of these things that I do today. So I just do things that are uniquely suited for my personality. That's what I always say.
I love that. You do things that are uniquely true to your personality. And I think what you've done too is, I imagine that insecurity of not knowing exactly who you are and how you feel, that actually gave you opportunities to try things that said, why not? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Paired with that insecurity has to do with the relationship with failure. For the longest time, I had a very huge fear of failure. Partly because of how I grew up, and I thought if you failed, that meant that you could never succeed. And then I had this near-death experience in 2012. It was a car accident in Virginia, and once I was facing my mortality, I started to ask myself the question: if I'd just gone, would I have been happy with my life at that moment? And it made me reflect on the importance of allowing myself to fail, because the ironic thing about failing is you can't grow unless you fail, right? Even when you're working out, it's the idea of knowing how to practice failure so you can get to the other rep. And so I changed my attitude, and then I just acknowledged my insecurities. I started talking about my struggles with my
Health.
mental health.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then I started talking about my struggles with dealing with the systems. And I found that other people would email me or would send me messages and say, well, thank you for sharing that. I thought it was only me. And that sense of I thought it was only me gave me an insight into why we need to create more systems of belonging, because what exists out now is not allowing everyone else to feel like they can fully be themselves.
So, Tayo, let me ask you this. Do you feel like when people first meet you, they read your bio, they meet you in person, they feel like you got it all together, right? Like like, let's just put out there. I mean, let's talk about your background, talk about your dad, because really, I think a lot of people would think that, like, wow, what does he have to be concerned about? He's young, he's good looking, he's successful. I feel like he's like an overachiever already, but obviously everybody is human, and sometimes it's good to remind ourselves of that.
Thank you, first of all. But one of the things that people might sometimes look at that and think like that, but at the same time, what led my path here was I was fired twice, right? Broke multiple times in New York City, and having to navigate the immigration system in America as a non-immigrant. All those things came with its own set of challenges. And for me, it wasn't, if I didn't make those decisions for myself and push through those particular moments, there's no way I would be here right now. And a lot of people can look at external things and think they know someone. But the most ironic thing is that what makes someone has to do with a lot of things you can't see. Anyone's identity is more invisible than the visible. And so for me, for anyone looking and thinking about why is this guy doing all these things, I will just ask them to think about their own salient identities. What are the things that are important to them? The things that make them who they are. For me, it's being Black, being a man, and being, someone that grew up all over the world as a third culture kid. And so if you start off with yourself, someone can say it's being a mom, it's being a father, it's being a CEO. Then you want to list out all those important things that would feed that identity. And for me, what fed my identity as being Black and being a man and being someone that is interested in bridging cultural divides led to the career path that I have right now. And I will always encourage anyone to do that. Start from your identity and how to feed that, and then you find yourself, getting into several fields regardless of whatever challenges you're facing. So that's what I did. That's honestly what I did.
I
Yeah.
love that. So let's start from the beginning. Can you share with us, Tayo, sort of your backstory and, and your own sort of yes factor moment or aha moment?
I shared one aha moment already, right? That was
Mhm.
the car accident. And so the backstory, though, is I spent the first decade of my life in and out of 3 military regimes, and 2 of them were dictatorships. And so my first relationship with anything that had to do with leadership or even just understanding how people interacted was really this idea of suppression, this idea of oppression. And I knew my parents would tell me all the rules of what not to say and what to say. And I used to observe that a lot from a critical lens, because Nelson Mandela is my greatest inspiration. And around the same time Nelson Mandela was, coming out of prison, and then he became the first Black president of South Africa, I would pair my experience with that, and I would say, one day I want to do something like that. I want to be able to free people from an oppressive type of thinking. And I never knew what that would look like. I just thought I want to do that. And then we transitioned to civilian rule in Nigeria. And then my dad's job as a diplomat started to take me to different parts of the world. And this was when I really got to understand how the world saw me. Because the first time I remember feeling different was I was this skinny Nigerian kid with a thick Nigerian accent in a French-speaking country in an American international school going through puberty. I was 10 years old. And someone came up to me to tell me how thick my lips was, or how my hair looked weird. And I thought to myself, wait, what? Like, is
Wow.
something wrong with me?
Mhm.
And I was 10, so, you start to think, yeah, maybe I should have thinner lips, or maybe I should, hide my hair. And I would have a series of these things. And it led me down this path of, I was like depressed without even knowing I was depressed. I had several anxiety attacks. And then I started to then think about the fact that I've always been fascinated by getting people out of oppressive and suppressive mindsets. And I'm doing it to myself here. And so I started to say, let me start writing. I started writing in middle school, and I started writing the things that I needed to believe about myself in order for me to free myself of this things I'd internalized. And then I moved back to Nigeria for high school. I went to boarding school, and in boarding school, everybody's there. This is your house. And so it was the first time I was bullied, not physically, but socially. Everybody, you know, I went to a boys boarding school, and then it was a girls boarding school. So we go home to the boys, right? We were separated
Mhm.
that way because cross gender, and I was bullied because they thought that they said this guy seems to have everything, right? He's come here with a different accent. He's taller, and he seems to have the ear of the authority. And I remember feeling
Mhm.
so ostracized, and I thought to myself, this is another form of suppression, and it's
Wow.
often caused by people's fear that someone's going to take something from them. So I started writing again. So I said, okay, I've had the oppression as a living in a dictatorship, then go in there where people are telling you that being yourself is not enough, then coming back to a place where you're supposed to feel at home, and people are saying, well, because I'm threatened by you, I'm not going to include you in certain things. And that really is what sparked everything, right? So when I
Mhm.
came to America for college, I then put all that into application, and I started leading movements along those paths, and telling those leading those movements from those stories of personal experiences, and inviting people to share their own moments where they've been bullies or
Mhm.
they've been bullied. And then we created that spectrum of how to fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it started from my personal experiences. I've experienced a lot of the things that I talk about, and so I just wanted to create space through my vulnerability so others can feel like, okay, maybe I've done that too. Here's what I can do moving forward.
I love that. It started from your childhood and every stage. And I mean, talk about that stress at being such a young age. And then even at 10 years old, like you start to question yourself. But kudos to you for writing this down and making a movement of this and really thinking about what you need to do. I think a lot of young people could find a lot of value and can relate to what you went through when you were a kid. Now you've had the chance, now you've spoken at the United Nations, you've had numerous TED Talks, all these amazing podcasts. In many ways, you've taken all those challenges and made something very special about this. So I really want to talk about this. you
Hmm.
know one question I have for you is, and I've done a lot of my Tayo research, as I told you before we started here. What does it mean what do you think it means to be an active member of a community? Because I heard you talk about this, and I want to see if you could share this with us.
To be you're talking about the art of diplomacy talk, and so
Yes.
to be an active member of the community is to know who's leading it and who makes up the community. And so anyone here, do you know your mayor? Do you know your local constituents? Do you know who the governor is? Do you know all those things? Do you know when the election cycle is? Do you know the demographics? And I ask this because it's not to shame anyone, because I'm sure many of us don't know, but the only way we can participate in changing something for the good is raising awareness about something. And oftentimes when I'm invited to have these conversations, there's no starting point because people don't know where they live. They don't know
Mhm.
what's happening around them or who's making the decisions around them. And so being an active member of the community starts with that knowledge of what's happening, and then deciding how you participate. I'm going to vote this way, or I'm going to join this group, or I'm going to volunteer here based on the knowledge you have. That's how you do that. And the most interesting thing about this is that it's all based around your interests. Maybe you're a musician, right? So then you become inculcated into the music environment around your area, and you start to see the systems at play. Maybe you love sports, and then you start figuring out how to, and you're a parent, you start figuring out how to take your kids to different sports leagues, and you being an active member of that, you decide to fund one program, you decide to make sure that there's opportunity for all these folks. But if more of us adopt that attitude, we're going to have a more equitable society and inclusive society, because we're operating with knowledge of what's happening in the systems, and we're using our involvement to actually make an impact. And that means awareness plus action equals change. So there.
I love that. And I love how you shared in your TED Talk too, that you talked about how even as a kid, you talked to your dad and you learned a lot about diplomacy, right? How to interact with people that aren't like you. And so I love this because I love the title of your book, and use your difference to make a difference. These are powerful words, Tayo. I think that almost bears repeating. So can you talk a little bit about the book?
Yes.
What are you hoping to achieve with this book? Hoping to share. What's the plan with this?
I learned early on that a lot of people in our world react to differences in unique ways. And it's not often in the best way. They'll either act threatened because it's not something that fits with their standard or norm, or they'll try to suppress it, right? Look at anything, whether it's enslavement or colonization or any of the isms. It stems from a lack of understanding of what is different from them, because whatever is different from them has been told that this is a threat to you in some shape or form, right? And I was listening to a song by Nico and Vince. It was called "Am I Wrong?" This is a while ago, and I was dissecting the lyrics about, am I wrong to step outside the box? And I was like, I really like the song. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, these folks are Americans. And I found out that they were Norwegian. And I thought to myself, I've just made this wrong assumption. And as I was dissecting the lyrics, I said, we need to learn how to use our differences to make a difference. And I thought,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, that's what I've been trying to say for the longest time. And
Mhm.
so once I figured out that that was my mission statement, I started writing and studying how differences have actually ended up being the best superhero quality we can have once we tap into them. And so the book ended up becoming this framework for people who are interested in stepping outside of the comfort zone to understand differences within them and an environment, and then how to turn that into an asset. Because I want us to flip that narrative and change our relationships to differences, and then just embrace the diversity around us. And in the book, I have 3 steps that you can do that as a change maker individually, as a company, as a parent, and as an institution. And that was the goal. It was out of my observations. You could probably tell that I spent a lot of my time observing human behavior, and so I don't like to just share observations. I like to share frameworks, and so that's what the book is about.
I love that. That's huge, because you're saying that. I love that your quote about your differences are your superpowers, right?
Yeah,
Your superhero powers, and that we shouldn't see them as being something that's to an shouldn't see that as a negative, but how can you celebrate that and share that and use that to your benefit? So that's great. Talk about this. You have 2 courses: cultural Competency. Talk about that course first, and then we'll go to the next one because this is really interesting. I love the title, and I love the difference between the two courses too. I thought it was really interesting. Maybe they're not different, and so I'd like to learn more from you on that.
I think two of the most important skills we need to learn, and this is where you're going, the second one, are personal branding and cultural competency, right? So
Mm-hmm.
cultural competency is your ability to communicate effectively across cultures, and personal branding is how you tell the story of you to the world. And I want to create a safe space for people to be able to tell their stories without feeling shame. And I also want people to be able to know how to communicate effectively across cultures so they don't shame others. And so I thought those things were important, especially now in the age of COVID. It's becoming really important to tell your story and for companies to understand how to bring people from different backgrounds together. And so, I have personal courses on both because I think those two things need to work in tandem. How to use your voice is going to lead you to know how to use your difference to make a difference, which I always say, and how to create a safe space for connecting effectively across cultures is going to help create the next generation of global leaders. So, yeah.
So talk to me about, so well, you're here and you said I could ask you anything. So I'm going to ask you
Yes.
this, right?
Yes. Yes.
So someone thinking like this, right? So we obviously have a lot of people in the world. You talked about the pandemic, right? Many of them listening today to you are wondering, okay, well, how do I start that, right? I'm from a different background. I've always thought like I needed to change, my voice or the way I speak or the way I dress and whatnot. I feel like a little overwhelmed. What do you say to that?
Well, first thing that I would say is you have to accept that that's what you think. A lot of us don't change because we haven't accepted something, right? So you need to learn how to accept without shame. And so accept that this is what you feel right now in order for you to succeed. And then the most important thing is to then reflect on your core values. And the best way to do this, I'll teach you how to do this here, is I always challenge everyone to be able to tell me what their 5 core values are. And most people don't know what the 5 core values are. And if you don't know what your 5 core values are, you're going to become more of a stranger to yourself. So my 5 core values are creativity, curiosity, courage, compassion, and joy. 4 C's. Every day, my goal is to fill each of these values in some shape or form with my action or things that I'm interested in. If you're struggling with your identity and how to show up, you need to be able to come up with a way to list out what your 5 core values are and feed those values every day. And the more you feed those values, what's going to happen is you're going to create boundaries where you're going to say, I can't be in this environment because it doesn't allow me to feed this part of myself. You're going to create those boundaries with self, people, and systems. And then you're going to affirm those values with actions you take. And I've done this exercise in multiple environments. People start to realize, oh, I've always wanted to be an artist, so I'm going to take this art course. And in the next 6 months, they find their mood changing. Oh, I've always wanted to do this, but I'm in a relationship with someone that doesn't allow me to do that. Then they realize that they need to break up with that person. Or I've always wanted to nurture all these things. When you start thinking like that, you start to understand that we truly spend most of our lives in some workplace or education institution. So the biggest shame then becomes if you can't bring your full self where you spend most of your life in, you're not going to live a fulfilled life. So start off with your 5 core values, and you can find them by basically reflecting on the things you like. What are your favorite shows? What are your favorite characters? Who are your favorite people? And then you sit down with this list of people, this list of characters, this list of TV shows, and then reflect on why and what you like about these shows. And then you're going to find, I love the integrity of this person. I love this person to have a sense of humor. Or I love this person unapologetic. Those things are important to you. And once you start from there, that's your compass. That's your compass in terms of that.
That's your compass. Let me ask you this. So you made an example earlier that things change. Do your core values change over time or do they stay consistent?
They change. They change. I mean, mine have certainly changed. And they change with the more knowledge you have. Life, a truly fulfilled life is learning, unlearning, relearning, right? The reason I'm in the field I'm in is I'm constantly learning. There's so many things about people that I don't know about, right? But it is my job to continue to try and educate and create safe spaces for that. And if we have a fixed mindset, we're not going to be able to understand how to grow. And your values are going to change based on how you decide to grow, because your biases are going to either be biased or fortified based on the knowledge you have. And so, yes, your values certainly change with the more information you gather.
I love that. So let me ask you, I'm just thinking a day in Tayo. I'm thinking you must have a notebook next to you all the time because you must have big aha ideas, right? And you're probably jotting them down.
Yeah, because I have a napkin here. I just wrote some notes on. But yes, and then my Evernote is always working. And yes, I always have notes. Yeah.
I think it'd be really fun to be in your brain one day, Tayo, just to see all this going on. Okay, second course, we got to talk about this. I really love this because you're saying it's the year of your voice. Talk a little bit about that with us.
I think a voice is one of our most underutilized assets, and voice can be anything. It can be how you talk, how you express yourself, whether, whatever form of senses you use. And one of the things I teach students in university is actually public speaking and communication. And it's not from the typical lens. A lot of people say, well, you have to be charismatic this way. You have to have a loud voice. No, it's more from using whatever it is. If you're soft spoken, if you're anyway, I'll teach you how to speak the way you are. And I'm saying it's the year of people's voices because I think people are starting to realize that they're more powerful than they've been led to believe. Even the concept of the great resignation, a lot of that has to do with people realizing maybe I shouldn't be in this workplace, right? Or maybe I should start that business. Maybe I should go apply for something else. And that's because they've realized the power that they have within them. Now, before this, maybe many people thought that their employer held all the power. However, when you start to figure out what your values are, which I just discussed, and then figure out how you want to leave a legacy, then you're going to say, how am I going to use that? And the course just basically shows people how they can pair up what their values are with a message to the world and then do that consistently. Because that's the missing part. Some people might know what they want to do, but they don't know how to deliver that message. And I just walk through that. And I feel like if more people do that, we'll have beautiful stories.
It'd be a beautiful story. I think giving people a voice is really important. Whatever path that might be, I think it's great that you give them the tools to show them within. I gotta do this because this is something I really really enjoyed. And I talked about it a little bit earlier today, and that is your TED Talk. Okay, so I really loved your TED Talk. This was brilliant, and you talk about diplomacy, and I know you shared a little bit about the backstory to that. But when you think about that, when I listen to your talk, I love the Tayo way. Tayo doesn't just tell you something; he breaks it down to the steps that you need to take to get there. Like I feel like you're a natural teacher, and probably because you've mastered listening.
Yeah.
Or we just say we're always forever students, right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about this? When you talk about diplomacy, what does that mean? And how is this relevant to all relationships, whether it be business or life? Why do you think this is so important?
Well, I learned this. My dad was a diplomat, and every time it get posted, I just used to just watch what he would be doing. And his job was to figure out how Nigeria as a country could, have mutually beneficial relationship with wherever it posted. And it'd be along the lines of finance, of government, or, any sort of relationship. And he would just always, you would need to understand the country he's in first. So he would look through the newspapers and look through the news stations, and he'll figure out who the key figures are. And then you start figuring out how to embed himself in society, and then which piece of information he needs to gather. And so I broke it down into 3 ways. I said it's really learning how to collect and gather information. And a lot of collecting and gathering information, a quick tip here is find out what makes people happy, sad, angry, any of the emotions. If you start looking at what makes people in your environment happy, sad, and every of those things, you're going to find that it's very different from what you might have assumed, right? What you're going to find out is what makes people feel safe, what makes people feel like they can succeed, and what makes people feel like they can belong. You want to collect and gather this information and then reflect on it. And then as you're reflecting on it, you're going to find that, hey, maybe you are participating in making someone else feel unsafe. Awareness. Or maybe there's something you can do more of that you can make someone feel like they belong. Awareness. So that's one. And then the second thing is active listening. With active listening, you've already collected and gathered information. Now, a good way to continue and practice active listening is to understand how to ask open-ended questions that other people can invite themselves into the world. Too many people will ask a leading question and say, you're from Nigeria, right? So you must do this. Or you can say, hey, what are the things that make you feel, happy today? Or what are the things that make you feel safe? Or tell me about the most important story that you know in your life, or the most important figure in your life. And if someone is telling you about the most important figure in their life, you're going to find unique probing questions. I mean, you're doing a good job of that today, Wendy, right? You're asking all these open-ended questions that's going to lead you to probe into something. And then the last part is what we discussed, being an active member of the community. And the reason why I describe this as the act of diplomacy is, I think sometimes one definition of diplomacy is it's sitting on the fence, right? Just not having any opinion. And I wanted to expand that definition based on my experience, where it's actually learning how to show up in environments, different environments, by understanding where you are and understanding how to put yourself in the equation of where you are, so that you don't lose yourself and they learn more about you and you learn more about them. That's how I define diplomacy. So when you start doing those three things, you're going to find yourself figuring out how to deal with the multiple identities that exist in our world today.
It's incredible. That's incredible. I love that. And I think that can help you in all forms of your life, because when you have a better understanding of others, that's where you learn more about yourself as well.
100%.
I love that. You know, I got to share this with you because I really love this share. You know, Tayo shares a lot. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, I would strongly suggest you do. He shared a post, and I thought he talked about, you know, using your difference to make a difference, and talking about how his smile, your smile, was something that that you use your super. You want to talk about this? We got to talk about this. By the way, great smile.
Thank you. Oh, you want me to talk about? Okay, so well, I just think it goes, hand in hand with what we discussed. I think everyone has a trademark.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I recognized growing up as a kid was my name Tayo is short for Akin Tayo. In Yoruba culture, that means a warrior or the brave one is brought us joy. And for me, when anyone's asking me what I hope to do, I always say I just like to live up to my name. And for me, it's as much prophetic, right? I'm very, joy I shared is one of my values, and an instrument of my joy is my smile. And everyone's always talking. This guy's always smiling. No, always smiling. And I noticed that it is something that I've been able to use throughout my life. And so I was like, you know what? Let me just write about why I love smiling, and it's a trademark. And I was sharing that post and that poem in a way where I hope other people find something unique about themselves that's a trademark and do that more on purpose. Someone, it might be their hair. Someone might be the ability to tell stories, or someone, it might be something else. But live from that place every day, and you're going to find yourself having way, much more positive feelings of self. Because, an important part of self-love is celebrating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And a good way to celebrate yourself is to know why, why you're amazing. And a good way to know why you're amazing is to understand your trademark. And so that's what the post was. I was just hoping other people reflect and then really think about the unique things by themselves.
Well, I hope everyone takes a moment to look at it and reflects on. And we absolutely love your smile, and we do believe in your amazingness, Tayo, for sure. So thank you so much for sharing that. You know what? Let me take a moment. I see a lot of comments coming in. I'm gonna do a community moment for us. I did see. We do see the beautiful Lakers jersey behind you.
Oh gosh!
So someone wants to know. Gabe wants to know. Let's see. A question of somebody being traded. I apologize, Gabe. I'm trying to find this one. Okay.
I will help you. I also help you. So you might lose me, Gabe. So I'm a LeBron fan, right? So that's if you look there, the camera isn't panning out across, but I have all his jerseys, and that's one of his that's his first magazine cover. But so for me, maybe not a Lakers fan, but a LeBron fan. I don't think it's. I mean, obviously the trade deadlines happened. Winnie, they're talking about trades. And the basketball trade ended yesterday. So Westbrook is someone we're going to have to, have. But I think it's clear that the Lakers are not a great team this year. I was really hoping that we were able to turn our assets into, more shooters. But unless we get someone in the buyout market, Gabe, I think it's going to be more of the same. And I think we need a shooter and a defender. So those are my thoughts on the deadline. And I don't know that Westbrook is the best fit for the team.
There you go. And so there you go. That's Tayo for you. He does sports commentary as well. And by the way, Vicky is loving commentary. Vicky is quoting you, sharing growth, personal development, talking about all these things, really resonating with her. She's joining us from the UK on Facebook. Thank you so much, Vicky, for doing that. Amazing. So many comments. All right. I love this. Now, we got to put Tayo on the hot seat a little bit because we're going to have some fun. So that means speed round. All right. So we're going to give Tayo a minute, maybe a little bit more because we're all friends here. Let's ask him some questions and this will be, some fun. Tayo, we know that you've traveled and lived in so many different parts of the world. Are you ready? I kind of
Yeah,
should have asked if you're ready. All right.
I'm right.
So you've traveled and lived in so many different parts of the world. So let's dream a bit. You've been given an all expense trip to anywhere in the world to simply, believe it or not, relax. Now we know Tayo probably doesn't relax that often, right? But where do you go and who do you choose to bring with you?
It's definitely gonna be my family. And like, so my mom, I have three brothers, mom, pops, and brothers. I'm taking them to Mykonos. No, Santorini. Sorry, I said Mykonos. I love Mykonos, but Santorini is my favorite Greek island. And the reason is, as you correctly guessed, I have a hard time relaxing, but it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. And there's a sense of serenity that actually allows me to be present, whether it's just the water or the fact that, you can sort of escape from the world a little bit. But water's so clear, you got those white houses with the blue roofs, and it allows you to really just appreciate nature. And I love to do that with my family because part of growing up the way I did means we were always in different continents. And so this would be one of those moments where we can just be together in one place and take in the beauty that nature has to offer.
I love that. Tayo, do you take your phone or you throw the phone in the ocean?
You know what? I'm not gonna throw the phone in the ocean, but I'm gonna put the phone back. I'll leave the phone behind in the hotel room or something.
In the safe. That's right. There you go. Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right. Thank you, Tayo. All right. Second question. And this one, I think I really felt like this was a good one for you. And so I hope you like it. And that is, I'd like you to tell us sort of your most memorable disappointment and what it's taught you.
So I failed many times. That's the thing that doesn't often get said in my bio. I've been fired twice. I've been broke. I had over 85 job rejections upon graduating from college. And then I had to beg for an employment, right, from a previous internship. And then I had a near-death experience. I didn't get into the colleges I wanted to for my MBA, and then I was conditionally accepted because I had a low GMAT score. So I've had all these series of rounds of disappointment, and everything that I've learned from that is it is okay to fail. Many people in the audience are probably recovering perfectionists, and I often talk to perfectionists and recovering perfectionists who just always think about what they've survived in addition to what they feel like they failed, and that's the biggest lesson I've learned. I don't think I always have the greatest appreciation for my resilience, and everyone here has survived something, which means you're actually resilient. And so when you find yourself reflecting so much in your disappointment that you get to the place where you're not forgiving yourself and you're stuck because you feel like you are now your failure as opposed to you just failed, one of the ways to get out of separating yourself from the failure element is to understand that this is a mere path to whatever your destination is ended up to be. And so what can you learn from that? And when you take away what you can learn from that, how can you then say, hey, this is just going to be a little notch in the belt when I make it? And so for me, one of the biggest things I learned was to take failure on the chin and understand that it is a necessary part of life, because I failed and I'm sure I'll fail continuously, but then turn that into a beautiful learning experience as to, hey, I'm actually resilient. I survived it, which means there's a greater story for me to be told. And it was tough for me to internalize that because, my culture, you perfectionist excellence. And so I had to come up with my own idea of that. So just that would be what I would say.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that. It's okay to fail. It certainly is. Well, you certainly didn't fail today because we are celebrating you today, Tayo. And we are so grateful and blessed to be able to spend this time with you, my friend. And all of you who are here with us live, thank you so much, Crossex Fighter. Thank you so much, Joshua. And so many of you. Wow. So amazing to have all of you support us on this show. Thank you, Tayo, for your time and your friendship. I'm so grateful that our paths crossed. And I'm glad we had this moment together. And thank you so much, friends, for watching, supporting our program. Please take a moment to share this show with someone that you care about. All over social doesn't hurt. And as a reminder, you can find full episodes of Level Up with Winnie Sun on NASDAQ, CW San Francisco, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Be well, and I can't wait to see you again next week. Take care, my friends. Have a great weekend.